when you're feeling fear about something, or when you're feeling anxiety about something, if it's giving you that added equal sense of excitement, like you want to pursue it, then it's probably worth trying to pursue. And that on the other side of that, you will rise above your fears, that you will experience more joy, and you will transcend that anxiety. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Flow Over Fear podcast, where it is our mission to help you to rise above fear and realize your ultimate potential in leadership and life. I'm your host, Adam Hill, and it is my goal to share with you the human side of high performance. My guests share their experience with fear, anxiety, struggle, challenge, and, most importantly, despite all of it, how they rose above it to achieve incredible results. So, if you're ready to rise up, let's get started. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Flow Over Fear and this episode of Three Things. And today I want to talk about adventure. No, not adventure like you Yanks would say. Adventure, the way that Alby Mangels or Steve Irwin would say it. Now, if you don't know who Alby Mangels is, I suggest you go to the Googles and you type in Alby Mangels and prepare to be inspired. This guy was the OG influencer who just decided to pick up a camera in the 70s and 80s, I think it was, and literally Magnum PI himself all across the world on this just amazing epic adventure, doing these crazy, crazy things that Australians would do. Sorry, Australians. But, and you know, in the same way Steve Irwin would do it later in life, but Alby Mangels was just this original guy that would go pick up. He left his job as like a bricklayer. He bought a boat, a cheapo boat, and he just started sailing all over the world and filming it with his dogs. It was amazing. I used to watch this show in college back when the Travel Channel used to actually play travel shows instead of weird ghosts or UFO things. And they used to actually play travel shows, like where you could like learn about travel and learn about the world and stuff. Alby Mangels was on one of these shows. It was also on maybe the Discovery Channel or something like that. Look him up. He's incredible. But I digress. The adventure is what I want to talk about today, and specifically how adventure is the antidote to anxiety. And now this may seem like a weird thing, because when you hear that, you might be thinking to yourself, wow, like traveling across the world or doing adventurous things sounds like it would trigger some anxiety. And well, you may be right. But in the way that you approach it, there are reasons why adventure is the antidote to anxiety. And I want to get into those today. And I want to share a little bit about one of the first adventures that I went on, which was back in high school. There was a course that we took. I was lucky enough to go to a high school that sat literally next to the Pacific Ocean in Dana Point, California, called Dana Hills High School. And at this school, there was a course for some of the higher years, like maybe juniors and seniors, mostly seniors, that was called Marine Ecology. And in this course, we got to study, obviously, marine ecology and the biology of the ocean and how life thrived in the oceans. And the biggest attractor to this class was the fact that at the end of the year, every one of those high school kids, like 30 or 40 of us, would jump in a bunch of raggedy old vehicles and drive down the California coast all the way into Mexico, all the way down into Baja, all the way into about halfway down the peninsula to the Sea of Cortez in a totally remote location called Baja de las Animas. And there we would spend 10 days camping and eating what we caught and living off of the land, so to speak. In the relative wilderness of Baja, Mexico, while learning about the marine ecology and in the abundant life that lives in the Sea of Cortez. And it was amazing. There were fin whales that would just, come into the bay there. There were hammerhead sharks. There were stingrays, all sorts of different cool stuff that we would learn about. And of course, everybody wanted to go on this trip. And the amazing thing was that leading up to this trip, as most high schools do, we had certain cliques that would exist in the high school. You had your jocks, you had your nerds, you had your chess club, you had all these different little cliques that would, kind of congregate next to each other. But the beautiful thing is that this class was filled with a blend of all of those cliques. And before the trip, we were still kind of partitioned off. But once we got there, once we were all kind of living with each other and all had a job to do and all on this adventure together, we all became one community. We transcended that idea of being in a clique. We actually transcended a lot of the anxieties we felt around who we wanted to be or show up as in the world, and realized that there was more to life than just, what other people thought of us. And so there was this big feeling like when we got back from that trip of wow, we learned not only about marine ecology, but like how to live in a community and really grow up and mature in a way that we would have never expected. And I remember that leading up to that trip, so I took this class because I wanted to, go on this trip with my friends. And it was a weird situation for me as someone who was always like afraid of doing things. I never really, I was always afraid of like joining the football team or going anywhere in the world or traveling or doing anything like that. Even though I desperately wanted to, I was still afraid of doing those things because it was just out of my comfort zone. And so I just didn't do them. And, but for some reason I was drawn to this trip and I ended up going. And I remember that leading up to it, I was really, really anxious. I didn't want to go because it was seriously outside of my comfort zone. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what would be there. I didn't know if, I would be ostracized by the other kids that were there because I was maybe an outcast. I don't know. But I was very, very anxious leading up to it. But for some reason, I was able to overcome those fears, get in the car and drive down with everyone. And, upon arriving there, I immediately realized that I was transcending that original anxiety, that this was, where life was. This adventure was where life was. I was literally living out the lifestyle of Alby Mangels at that time. And before I ever knew who Alby Mangels was. We went out, we fished, we caught the fish that we would eat. We didn't shower. We used the restroom in the desert, and things like that. And so it was just this amazing outside of our comfort zone experience that allowed us to transcend whatever anxiety that I had and helped me to come back a lot more confident. Now, in the years that followed, I leaned back into my comfort zone, leaned back into my fears. And I didn't do anything like that again for a long time. But that trip kind of remained that like point of reference for, rising above my fears and experiencing some adventure and going on adventures. And I just remember how it made me feel, how wonderful it made me feel to do that. And it wouldn't be until much, much later in my life when I started going on adventures and doing more things and and actually living life more to what Alby Mangels would have lived, that I started to realize that anxiety is the antidote to anxiety. It's an antidote to anxiety, meaning when you're feeling fear about something or when you're feeling anxiety about something, if it's giving you that added equal sense of excitement, like you want to pursue it, then it's probably worth trying to pursue. And that on the other side of that, you will rise above your fears, that you will experience more joy and you will transcend that anxiety and you will experience a greater sense of purpose and you'll expand your comfort zone. And that kind of gets into the three things that I want to talk about today, the three reasons why adventure or how adventure can be an antidote to anxiety. And the first is that it gives us an opportunity to join communities with a common cause or a purpose. Now, you think about those trips that you go on, which might be a high school trip or a college trip or some kind of adult trip where you are in a group, experiencing a new experience for the first time. A lot of times, the way to get over the anxiety is to not do it alone, to do it in a group, to do it in a community. And when you experience it in a community, all of the differences that you have with the people in that community suddenly dissipate, and you all have this common purpose to see this adventure through, to go with where it is. When I went down to Baja, all of the, there were no jocks, there were no nerds or anything like that. We all just had a common purpose to live that trip, to experience what it was like down there, to survive that, experience and come back elevated. That's the type of adventure you want to experience with a community. It allows you to transcend that experience of our differences and actually come together. I know that may sound a little bit hippy dippy, but I would imagine, especially after that experience, that the way that we can achieve world peace is instead of going to war against each other, we can take the world leaders and all of their differences and throw them onto an island for a while and let them survive that island and let them survive that experience and come together. And I almost guarantee that they will come back with some heightened level of awareness for how we can live together in harmony and with one another. And they will certainly come back, and the fears of one another, the fears of our cultural differences or our literal other differences will dissipate, and will become a better, a stronger community, and we'll form those kind of alliances. That's been my experience many times, especially once, in the first time when I got sober. Before I got sober, when I was in my drinking, I reverted back inward, and I became alone again. And I wanted to do everything on my own, even though I already had this experience on the Baja trip. And it wasn't until I got sober that I found a community there with a common purpose. And that was almost an adventure, this adventure of sobriety. And even when I reframed it into being an adventure, it became this purpose, this cause that I could pursue with a community, and that community of support would help me through it, and we could help each other through it, and we could all find that common theme in our lives. So that's the first reason that adventure can be an antidote to anxiety, is it can bring us together with certain communities where we can heal, where we can grow, where we can transcend. And the second reason that adventure can be an antidote to anxiety is, frankly, it expands our comfort zone. When we lean into those moments of fear, when we have those oh shit moments where fear and excitement pop up in equal measure, if we go into those moments, it expands our comfort zone. If we go on our own quote unquote Baja trip, whatever that might be for us, we expand our comfort zone so that we are able to grow in new areas of our lives. We come out the other side more confident, more courageous, more able to conquer whatever's next for us. That's the way that adventure can be an antidote to anxiety. Because on the alternative side, when we lean into comfort, what happens is that we experience this pain of this atrophy, where the anxiety that we have doesn't it may ease in the moment, like, oh, thank goodness, I'm going to avoid that pain or that fear. But what happens is, it builds resentment, because you're preventing yourself from doing something that you really, really want to do and that will help you grow. And B, you atrophy to the point where your comfort zone actually diminishes, like a rubber band sitting in the sunlight. it becomes brittle and it just breaks so that you can't expand your comfort zone. Whereas you build the elasticity of your comfort when you're able to lean into that adventure. Let's just say that the anxiety, the fear doesn't necessarily go away. And that's okay. You're allowed to feel the feelings. You're allowed to feel the negative thoughts. But what happens is that you are able to do more within that anxiety. You're able to recognize that anxiety is not preventing you from achieving the things that you want to achieve or doing the things that you want to do, that you can go anyway despite that fear. It builds that muscle. And that's really what it is it's a muscle. And by going on these adventures, it doesn't have to be a big adventure, maybe little adventures, maybe be a little bitty Alby Mangels, that you can actually build that muscle. That's the resistance you need to build the muscle and look back on a life without regret, without resentment. Because anxiety is uncomfortable enough. Why would you want to add resentment to it? You know what I mean? So instead of building that resentment just to have that comfort in the moment, why not go do the adventures, do the things that take you outside of your comfort zone and feel the joy and the thrill of achieving something you never thought that you could do. And that will give you the third thing. The third reason that adventure is the antidote to anxiety is that it establishes a point of reference for all of the things that you can do in the future. It establishes a point of reference for all of the things that you can achieve that you never thought that you could. When I went down to Baja, it actually, even though I regressed, it still set a point of reference for me that, hey, I did that thing. I went down there and I survived. I know that I could live off the land. I could camp out on the beach for 10 days. I can go poop in the woods or whatever. You know, those things, it becomes that point of reference for you that you can do it, that you can achieve it. And later in life, I did that with sobriety. Sobriety became a point of reference for me that I could achieve things that I never thought that I could do. Boom, another notch in your belt. Keep stacking on top of yourselves those points of reference so that they become more evidence that you can achieve what you never thought that you could achieve. And again, it doesn't take really, really big, audacious things to make that happen. You don't need to constantly go conquer the world. Just stack on top of one another little things that put you outside of your comfort zone, that serve as that point of reference, that build that muscle so that when you choose to go after that big thing and you chunk it down into its own set of little things, that in and of itself becomes a point of reference. You begin to expand your comfort zone gradually by all of these little points of reference that serve as evidence that you can achieve everything that you want to. Because I guarantee, my friends, you can achieve anything that you put your mind to as long as you stack those little adventures on top of each other. And one of the ways in which I do this, I manage my adventures, is I create what's called an adventure list. And this is not much different from what many people would call a bucket list. But because I don't want to be as morbid and I want to keep it in the realm of this life, and I don't want to align things that I want to do with my imminent demise or my death in the future. So why not just call it an adventure list? Because the more we do these adventures, the more we live. You know, this isn't a bucket list. This is a living list. This is an adventure list. So I create this adventure list of everything that I've wanted to do, even if it scares me, and especially if it scares me. Whether it be, whether it be going on a trip or taking a survival course or, sailing across the Pacific Ocean or doing anything, I put it on this list. And every quarter, I relook at this list. I either add to it, and I'm always adding to it, and I'm always trying to knock things off. But every quarter, I look at it as part of my vision and reflection retreat, and I make sure that I'm being intentional about when I add those things to my plans on how I can do it. that every quarter I'm doing some adventure from that adventure list that I can enjoy. This recent, the most recent one was going up to Montana and camping out in Yellowstone, and doing that and plotting out this adventure retreat. Another recent one was going through a speaking course on how to become a public speaker, and I just completed that. So create your own adventure list that you can use to propel yourself forward. And that, my friends, is how you can become your own Alby Mangels, to create your own adventure. So a little bit of homework for you. First, look up Alby Mangels on Google. Seriously, you won't be disappointed. Second, start creating your own adventure list. What are the things that scare and excite you at the same time, that trigger that oh shit moment in your life? Put that adventure list, write it down, and then review it every quarter. What adventure are you going to go on this quarter? And then keep pursuing those things, because adventure, my friends, is the antidote to anxiety. It's an antidote to anxiety. And moving yourself beyond your comfort zone, establishing those points of references, and building those communities is truly what makes life worth living, while you transcend your fears, become more confident and courageous to live the life that you've always wanted to live. So let's go on this adventure together. Thanks for joining me today. We'll see you next time. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to the Flow Over Fear podcast. If you'd like to learn more about getting into flow and learn the foundations of flow, I have a free video series on my website at www.adamcliffordhill.com called The Foundations of Flow. Feel free to go there and download it and start your journey to rising above fear and achieving greater flow in your life. And if you like this episode, and I'm guessing you did if you stuck around for this long, then please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button, and you will receive notifications when I have new interviews, new recaps, and new trainings that pop up on YouTube. Thanks again for joining us.